Conway Scenic Railroad to welcome you here today to join us in our annual Railfans Day. This year marks the 40th anniversary of locomotive 4266. Two of its original crew members when it was new to the Boston and Maine are here today. Rudy, our engineer, on the locomotive, and Al Breyer on the 7470. Both worked together on this locomotive many years up on the Berlin line. The first gentleman that's going to speak with you today is Carl Byron, the B&M Railroad Historical Society. Folks from the B&M Historical Society, led by Dennis Adams of Exeter, New Hampshire, put together the banner that she came through today. I'll turn the presentation over to Carl. After the presentation, members of the 470 Club will award the locomotive that they've been raffling off over there. There'll be a brief presentation through the office of Mr. Ray Burton. We're going to break a bottle of champagne over the buffer plate, and she'll take a freight train to Conway. Carl Byron.
Thank you. This thing working? Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I guess I gave some people a little bit of a scare, and we can probably chalk it up to the fact that nobody wants to come up here except by automobile. If I could have ridden up behind this old girl, we probably would have been here on time. I do have a few notes. Gary told me to make a long speech. It's a pleasure to be here to celebrate a birthday. A rather unusual birthday, I admit, but still a birthday of some historic importance. After all, some of us describe having a midlife crisis as being 40 years of age. She's handling it better than I am. F7 4266 was built by EMD back in 1949. At that time, America was at its height as an industrial power. What was good for GM was good for the country, and nobody had dreamed about clogged highways, acid rain, smog-choked cities, or anything else. In a sense, like the DC-3 aircraft or the 55 Chevy, this locomotive symbolizes its era perfectly. There's no electronics in this old girl, and there's no air pollution equipment either. Sophistication was not her strong point, but reliability was. In fact, even today, as recently as last summer, when the Santa Fe was looking at upgrading and improving its locomotive fleet, what did it look at in terms of comparing locomotives? None other than a 4-unit ABBA set of F7s, what their speed, traction, effort curves would do, and so on. Its legacy remains on the railroads of America today, including the B&M, in several ways. First of all, a list of the railroads that had F units would be an awful lot longer than the list of units or roads that did not. At EMD, where it was the most successful cab unit design ever built, and probably most importantly, and something with a bittersweet relationship to us, it by and large was the unit that put the steam locomotive out of business. In terms of the B&M in particular, they had a long and have had a long relationship with General Motors, the builder of this engine. Predecessor Electromotive Corporation was incorporated in 1922, and in the mid-20s built a number of doodlebugs for the B&M. When this old girl's dad, if you will, first rolled out of EMD in 1939 to take on the steam locomotive, the B&M was one of the railroads that had she and her 3 other units on test. And General Motors is not unaware of the significance of this, for tomorrow they will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the FT by throwing an open house at LaGrange. This is something extremely unusual. EMD has only once before in its life opened its doors to the general public and said, bring your camera. Generally, it's guarded like Fort Knox. So it is very much aware of the importance of the cab unit on America's railroads. 4266 and her sisters, F7 sisters, 4265 through 8A and B, were actually the last F units purchased by the Boston and Maine. The B&M had started in 1943 and ended up with 48 FT cabs, which looked similar to this, with 1,350 horse rather than 1,500, and basically helped us win the war and put the bulk of the B&M steam locomotives out to pasture. After the war, the F2 came along, and the B&M had the largest number of those, and then finally the F3, and wrapping up here the F7. These locomotives were streamlined. They look beautiful, as we all agree, but unfortunately trying to run one of these backwards isn't quite as easy as running one forward. So in 1948, the General Motors decided to take the guts of this unit and put it inside something they called a BL2. It was too expensive to manufacture, its aesthetics left something to be desired, and only about 50 or 60 of them were sold. The following year, 1949, when our birthday girl here was built, they tried again, and Dick Dilworth came up with the GP7, which is in essence this locomotive's innards and controls inside a car body switcher. And as they say, the rest is history. This F7 style was the most popular of the cabs. The GP7s sold about 2,600, while the Fs were 4,000. But the GP9, which was just a little more horsepower, blew the F9 style away. The F9s, they only produced about 240 of them. They produced over 3,600 of the Jeeps. Within 10 years of this unit's birth, this cab unit design was obsolete. Fortunately, there are a lot of people here today with the B&M Historical Society, with the 470 Club, with the North Conway Scenic, that cared enough and were committed enough to help us preserve a little slice of this portion of railroad history. Therefore, I think I've talked long enough. I'd like to turn this microphone back over to Gary and tip my non-existent hat to our birthday girl here today. Thank you.